Look, we've all recognized how important this program is, and as you look through the years, and we talk about how Social Security has changed or not changed, I think it's important to recognize that beneficiaries now, because of the formula, are receiving more benefits than they ever have, and there's been a steady increase because of the way the program is structured. I also think it's important to point out, and I just came from before votes, a budget hearing, and OMB Director Young was there. And she and I got into an exchange, and I was trying to get her to explain in the president's budget, if you look at if you look over the 10-year period, the president's budget cuts about $17 billion worth of payroll taxes from the beneficiaries. And the Treasury Secretary was over on the Senate side doing her thing and really made the comment in an exchange with Senator Cassidy that the president really didn't have a plan, he had just guiding principles. Well, I believe that we're going to have to come together in a bipartisan way to fix really some of these long-term solvency issues. But in the meantime, there are things that we can do to improve customer service and the efficiency and the better use of taxpayer dollars as it relates to the operation of the Social Security Administration. And Mr. O'Malley, in our meeting, I got a sense that you are sincere about doing that. So the first question that I have for you, you've got a relatively short runway here. Your term expires in 2025. If you could do one thing that was lasting in the administration past your tenure, what would that be?
Mr. Chairman, if I could do one thing that would last into the future, I pause a little bit here because having served as mayor and served as governor, I've seen many of the things that I thought would last for a long time dissipate as soon as the next fella came in. I think the most important thing that I can do that will have the most lasting impact is to change the culture at Social Security so that we realize that all of those huge numbers that we deal with are real people. If I can change that, it struck me in walking around that building that there are very few walls that even have pictures of the human beings that we serve. We've kind of gotten away from that in the pressure and the trauma, if you will, of all of the rising workloads. If I could change one thing, it would be to use modern technology, the data, the map, the measures, to realize that each of those dots on the map represents a real human being.
If you can do that, we'll probably all chip in for your statue, if you can change the culture of your bureaucracy.
Not a brick, Mr. Chairman, not a brick.
Different type of question here. You've seen, or the agency's seen, a decline from about 87 million calls down to about 81 million calls on an annual basis, and wait times have doubled. Part of the problem, I think we discussed, was implementation of the new phone system. Can you tell us where that process is and how you expect that to improve?
Yes, sir. The short context of this is that shortly before the pandemic, my predecessor decided to launch on a new contract for the phone system that would integrate the 1,210 field offices in each of your districts with the headquarters phones and the 1-800 phone number. Then the pandemic hit, and everything was all about closing down the field offices, standing up an 800 number really quickly, and trying to do everything through that 800 number. We have struggled with the technology, and an 800 number that has not lived up to what we expected of it in terms of the business intelligence to balance the load, to give us management information about who's calling when so that we can have the right staffing to cover it. And we are open to all options to improve that as quickly as possible. I was on the phone with the CEO of Verizon, and we hope to improve that. In the meantime, we do everything we can, and a little bit of good news here. While our average wait time has been 39 minutes for the last several months, over the last few weeks, we got that down to 31 minutes. Nothing to write home about, but it's at least, we're at least getting it headed in a better direction with leading actions that deflect calls on the front end and changes that allow us to resolve the call on the first time once people get through.
All improvement is good, and you know the administration has spent about $300 million on this contract so far implementing the system. I just think it's really important, and I think and I hope that you will be this kind of commissioner that understands that ultimately you've got to get this under control. You got to get the systems going and hold the providers accountable, and while simultaneously doing everything that you can. One final question here, and this has to do with disability applications. We've seen a decade-long decline in disability applications, and despite that, we've got about a 1.2 million caseload that's on backlog, but yet we had seen $100 million being spent to bring more in. So you got 1.2 million in backlog. There was an effort to, because of equity initiatives, to get more in. Can you tell us how much in the Social Security Administration has spent on these initiatives, and do you think this is an effective use? This has been an effective use, this $100 million for equity initiatives. Has this been a good use of the limited resources of the administration?
Well, I think that depends on what we learn from that effort and what we do moving forward. We've seen a great decline in the numbers of people that apply for both SSI and also for Social Security disability. Not as great as a percentage on those respectively. I think what we learned from that advertising campaign, and it's hard to disaggregate, I mean, it's hard to determine, Mr. Chairman, as we saw increased numbers of application in SSI, whether that was directly attributable to the ad campaign or was that directly attributable to the fact that people were coming out of the pandemic and it's a natural sort of follow-on effect. I believe that the better approach is going to come from much more targeted outreach to the populations that we already know are most likely able to qualify for SSI. That's going to require a level of data sharing between our agency and HHS and others.
Mr. Commissioner, my free advice is to get the existing workload under control, get it back on track before we go dumping more cases into it. And I look forward to your success on that with